Mahalo everyone, and welcome back to the Jolly Scarecrows channel. Today we're continuing our What If deck series, where we take a character from the anime and try and imagine what deck they would play using all of the cards available in the current card pool. Today's character is Duke Devlin, famous for inventing dungeon dice monsters. And we've had a couple of different versions of his deck. I'm going to show a second one after this. This one focuses more on, I guess, his sense of inventing a new game. And inventing the new game is what he did with Dungeon Dice Monsters, kind of represented here in this field spell. So obviously Duke Devlin really loves dice-themed cards. And what better dice-themed card, which kind of takes the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And changes it, is there than musical sumo dice games? And if you haven't seen this card, this is one with an alternative win condition. And so basically when your opponent, or the opponent of this card, enters their battle phase, you roll a die, and then this monster will move around clockwise all of the main monster zones. And if it happens to have more than 6 materials, then you win the duel, or at least the controller of the card when the effect activated wins the duel, because sometimes what can happen is you can lose the duel thanks to this effect if this has ended up on your opponent's side of the field. So how do we go about making musical sumo dice games? It's a level 6 XEs, and so one of the best ways of doing it is with Infinitrack, and part of the reason for that is the Infinitrack Goliath. And so musical sumo dice games is a machine, and so we can basically get rid of Goliath on the field, and that will mean it can't be destroyed by card effects. So it gives it a really nice level of protection. Your typical kind of opening move wants to be basically using Harvester and Anchor Drill. So together, these two can make 2 level 6s. But what you actually do, you tend to do, is actually use one of these level 6 extenders, or at least you try and do. So we've got Link Belt Wall Dragon, World Legacy World Crown, and Mech Knight Green Horizon. You've got one of those in your starting hand, and then you're able to get these two with the various cards of the deck, such as Heavy Forward and Pot of Prosperity. You end up basically being able to go to the rest of your Infinitrack engine in order to set yourself in the situation where you have dice games and a copy of Riverstormer for it to hopefully end up absorbing and winning with. If that isn't overly clear, what I'm going to do now is show you a little video of it working. Okay, so we've actually started really well in this hand. We've got a Heavy Forward and Infinitrack Harvester, so we're able to get the 2 Infinitracks we need. We've got a level 6 extender, and as a bonus, we've got the 2 trap cards that really help the deck out. And I'll go into that when they become live. So we'll start things off. We'll play the Heavy Forward, allowing to search our deck for an Infinitrack. Obviously, this is a big Ash target, but generally with these What If decks, they're not meant to be at the height of competitive. They're just meant to be kind of interesting. With Anchor Drill, it allows to special summon Harvester, which gives us a search, and you're going to be wanting to search the Brutal Dozer. Then you make them both monsters level 6, and this is key. You make them both level 6, but then you link off one of the monsters into Goliath, and the monster that you link off will depend on where you position it and what level 6 extend you have in your hand. So in this instance, you need 2 of the same column. So I want there to be the Link and the Heavy Forward, so that I can then go straight into the Mech Knight, and now I've got my 2 level 6s plus the Goliath. Whereas if I had gone straight into Sumo Dice games with Harvester and Anchor Drill, I wouldn't have had the Goliath on the field, and thus not the Mech Knight. So we go into the Sumo Dice games. You want to put it in the rightmost monster zone, so hopefully you're able to keep it on your side of the field when its effect activates. You can then attach the Heavy Forward to it, so it's now got 3 materials. Then you want to send Goliath to the grave, and that lets you special summon out Brutal Dozer, which then lets you special summon out another Infinitrack. Plus, now Goliath's gone to the grave, it will attach itself with its amazing effect that it now Sumo dice games can't be destroyed by card effects. And now we have 2 level 5s on the field. We're able to summon Infinitrack Riverstormer. And the key about this combo, maybe to ones you haven't seen, is this card, Road Roller, a new Infinitrack monster. When it is Xyz material, it has a Baguska style forcing your opponent's monsters into defense mode, except for the fact that it's, you've got an Infinitrack Riverstorm. So that's really nice. You can use its secondary effect, the detaching material to mill an earth monster. We're not going to do that in this instance because this has 2 materials plus itself, and Dice Games has 4 materials. So, were we to roll successfully a 1, this would link over, it would have 7 materials, and would win the game. Now, with this That 6 card, if we happen to roll a 2, 4, or a 6, we could treat the result as a 1. So we've got a 4 in 6 chance of winning the game if this remains the field state and the opponent enters the battle phase. We then have the handy Grand Horn of Heaven. And so when your opponent special summons a monster, we can immediately end their main phase. And so they're forced to then go into their battle phase, triggering the effect of Sumo Dice Game. We'll go into their turn. I'm not actually overly sure what deck they're playing. This is a bot deck on Dueling Nexus. I played that 6. They do a bunch of things. I think they end up using cards that are banned. So they link out Scrap Wyvern. So we negate that summon. Pretty cool. It does give them a draw, but we end the main phase. And so you see they'll go into their battle phase. Dice Games trigger. We've got a 4 in 6 chance to win. And we roll a 3, which is, other than 5, the only option that wouldn't result in us winning immediately. And so what I end up doing is changing the result, because 3 would put it over here. And so it's kind of, well, I could have kept it over here. Instead, I've given it to them because I know that I can enter my battle phase next turn, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is what I need to win the game. Providing they don't kind of do something like link it off. They don't in this instance. We bring out the Infinitrack Goliath. So this gives a bit of recursion if Riverstormer gets destroyed. I add Harvester just in case of needing to do this again later on. Enter the battle phase. It rolls a 1, and so with the 1, I convert it to a 6, so I get the monster back. I then destroy the Trumpeter with Riverstormer, and that means I can then attach it as a material, so there's another material on the field. And then one of the reasons I do that is so that I can then bring out the Divine Arsenal, and that lets me move the position of my monster with all the links, with all of the Xyz material, over to a position where it can then once again be 1 spot away from the musical Sumo Dice Games. So now, once again, we're just waiting for them to enter their battle phase, except for this time we don't have the Horn of Heaven. And they'll make quite a few moves in this juncture involving banned cards such as Hulk and, I don't know, various other things. But you can see the impact that the Infinitrack is having, forcing all their monsters into defense mode. They enter the battle phase. Dice Games, we roll a 6. We transfer that to a 1, and then we win the game. Okay, so a couple of cards I haven't mentioned. I haven't mentioned kind of Orgoth the Relentless. These are mostly in there to fit the theme, but Summon Dice can actually be pretty handy. So there's often occasions where pretty much all of these effects will work. If you normal summon an additional monster, that can help you sometimes with the Harvester and searching for, you summon dice, normal summon the Harvester. That lets you add an Infinitrack, which you then normal summon again, the Anchor Drill, starting your combo. Same with special summoning the level 5 or higher, any of these things. And from the graveyard, you often have things there as well. So summon dice, actually pretty useful. Dimension dice, so often you know, you'll either have Dice Games or Dice Dungeon. We've only got one copy of Dice Dungeon. Maybe ideally you'd have more than that, but fitting it into the 40 cards ended up being hard because we kind of need to have the 3 Grand of Horn of Heaven, the 3 Bat 6. We're playing. The reason we're playing Metal Foes Fusion is because of Clockwork Knight. So, what you're going to be aiming to do is use Foolish Burial Goods to ditch Clockwork Knight. Then you can banish this and discard a card, and it lets you add an Earth Machine from that. So, basically, Foolish Burial Goods plus another card can turn into any of your Infinitracks. And if you happen to have Clockwork Knight in your hand, then you can go to Metal Foes Fusion or another. And it basically just, you know, kind of justifies having more than one copy of Burial Goods. Now, Psychic Rover is an interesting card. You kind of want to set it up once you have the Dice Games with the Infinitrack. It prevents you from summoning from the extra deck, but in combination with that 6, it's an incredibly powerful card. So when it's sent to the graveyard, you can special summon it back if you roll a 2, 3, 4, or 5, and then if you roll a 1 or a 6, you get to destroy 2 cards on the field. And you can even pick itself, so you can keep sending it back and forth and use that 6 for every die roll to manipulate it. So you've got a 4 in 6 chance of special summoning it, and then you are absolutely guaranteed to get the destroyed effect. So that can be a nice little way of popping back row. You can summon it out using Dimension Dice, and the other monster you can summon out with that is Orgoth the Relentless. Yeah, that has a bunch of pretty cool effects, including a draw 2, which is why one of the reasons why that's in there, and it's preventing itself from being destroyed by battle or card effects. Also pretty nice. Doesn't come up too often, but I think a Duke Devlin deck has to have Orgoth the Relentless in it, really. Also, if you don't lock yourself into Infinitracks, and the Brutal Dozer is the key culprit for that, we do have Paradise Smasher in this deck as well. This is pretty much a one chance saloon because it's fairy. We can't use the effects of Heavy Forward or Goliath on it. But so you can attach your 2 materials you used to make it, roll the dice, hopefully manipulate it with that 6, and it prevents your opponent from activating monster effects. So, you know, that can be nice. If you decide. And it is, again, in there kind of thematically, really, I would say. You often don't go into it. Same with this Drudge Dragon. This is basically because you can get more than 2 XEs onto it. So, I don't know, sometimes you might have spare Mech Knights or World Horizons around, and then you can use that as an additional summon. Rarely ever comes up. Okay, that's it for this first What If Duke Devlin deck. I'm going to quickly go through a second one now, in case you want to play something slightly different. Okay, so if you weren't a big fan of the first Duke Devlin deck, how about this one? This is a ninja-themed Duke Devlin deck. Ninjas were introduced by Duke Devlin with Strike Ninja, Dungeon Dice Monsters, and he then played it against Nesbit. And basically, ninjas have become an archetype from then, but that was the first. And so I feel like, you know, part of Duke Devlin could be considered to be a ninja player if you stretch it. The other nice, there are 2 thematic things that work in terms of musical sumo dice games, and that is this Battle Ninja, really easy to summon level 6, and makes it so that your ninja monsters can attack directly. And with that in mind, the game state becomes a bit more like attacking against heart points rather than life points. You know, 2,500 attack directly, 2,500 attack directly. That's effectively puts your opponent's 8,000 life points into 3 attack directly. Or heart points, as they would be in the game of Dungeon Dice Monsters. The other nice thing about ninjas is they have this, the Ninja Shadow Mosquito. So you can use your level 2 extenders like Mitsu and Green Ninja, put them into this Shadow Mosquito, which will then have loads of material for the dice games to then absorb. Plus, it forces your opponent's monsters to attack. So, yeah, they don't technically have to enter the battle phase. That is probably a weakness of this compared to the other deck. but basically there just didn't ended up being enough room for the Horn of Heaven. So this deck works as a control deck. Ideally, you want to be able to, on your opening turn, play things like the Hidden Village of Ninjutsu Arts. So that adds protection as well as recursion. Really good field spell. You can search it with the link 2. So that only takes 2 ninjutsu monsters. Search for the field spell. Bring it out. And then hopefully in your starting hand, you've been able to get either a Notebook of Mystery or a Dancing Leaf. And that lets you put more ninjas onto the board into your opponent's turn. Your main bit of disruption is bringing out the Gravity Ninja. And so when you play that, when it's summoned or when it's flip face up, you can turn 2 of your opponent's monsters face down, and they'll have to stay like that. And so the way I try and play it is almost controlling my opponent's monsters, setting them face down, and then gradually build up my army of ninjas until the point that I can put 2 battle ninjas into dice games and then unleash havoc from there. We're playing a couple of other Duke Devlin-y cards compared to the other deck. So we've got another copy of the Dice Dungeon, and that allows us to fetch Dimension Dice. And the couple of odd things, so with Dimension Dice you can actually play Morphtronic Selphon, and the reason we're playing Selphon is because it meets the requirement of Crab Crane. And if it doesn't make sense, Crab Crane lets you play Outrigger Extension, which is my updated version of the Gradius and the Gradius's option. I mean, how much of a brilliant equip spell type vibe is this, extending out the Gradius with its Outrig? This actually also serves some function because it has that Infinitrack effect of your opponent not able to target Machine XE's monsters with card effects. And then you can obviously link off the Crab Crane into Goliath and do the same thing as the previous deck. So that will then prevent your Sumo dice games from being destroyed by card effects. So it can't be targeted, can't be destroyed. And you can really easy play monsters out like the Shadow Mosquito, forcing your opponent to attack. So this deck probably actually gets more wins than the one I showed before, but it probably gets, I'd say, less wins through dice games, if that makes sense. So really take your kind of pick if you feel like you want to play a bit like Duke Devlin. I haven't mentioned playing more copies of Dice Dungeon as well as 3 copies of that 6. Look at the amount of doubling of the attack one can get. And remember, you've got an attack directly in that. So if you've got Dice Dungeon and you're rolling to double its attack, you've got 5,000 attack going straight over what your opponent has, which are typically face-down monsters. Obviously, you know, none of these are competitive. You know, you can see there's no real hand traps. We're playing 1 disruption in here. So play 1 disruption in the other deck in the Horn of Heaven. So, you know, they have a level, but I think Duke Devlin also had a level. He wasn't a superstar duelist by any means. He had a good mind, but was far too reliant on dice-related cards in order to secure consistent. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed these 2 decks, and yeah, use them to try and play musical sumo dice games. You want to make that more consistent, there are certainly ways you can do that by taking out more of the Duke Devlin dicey themed cards, but I think actually ninjas and Infinitracks are some of the best ways to utilize and win with sumo dice games. I'm going to be traveling over the next month or so. I might do a very special video in that time, but other than that, I will see you when I get back here on the Jolly Scarecrows channel.